Good morning and welcome. Welcome to Florida Friendly Landscaping. Let's dig deep. This is our second session of the webinar, and we're going to cover principle number 2 of the Florida Friendly Landscaping, which is water efficiently. My name is Jennifer Pelham, and I'm the County Extension Director and Urban Horticulture Agent for the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Martin County. So just a review of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. For those of you who joined us last week, we did cover this, but we're going to cover it every week just to remind ourselves what the Florida Friendly Landscaping is. It's an integrated approach to maintaining an attractive, colorful, and diverse yard. And the purpose of the program is to educate Floridians about science-based, environmentally friendly landscape practices and to encourage everyone to conserve and protect our water resources. So that's our ultimate goal with this program. There are 9 principles of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. Last week, we covered right plant, right place. If you missed that presentation, you can send me an email and I will send you out the recording so you can view it. And today we're going to cover water efficiently, and then next week we're going to cover fertilize appropriately. So here's a schedule, the flyer of the topics that we are covering. We're going to cover almost every topic, one topic a week, except a few weeks we'll put 2 topics together because they're relatively short. And also I wanted to share with you this publication. It's the Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Handbook. All the principles that we cover throughout the weeks is covered in this handbook. It is available online, and I will email the link to everybody after this presentation. Also, if you are local, you can always stop by our extension office in Stewart by the fairgrounds and pick up your free copy. So today we are going to talk about water efficiently. And we're going to cover when and how to water the landscape. I'm going to talk a little bit about irrigation systems and controllers, and also the maintenance of irrigation systems. And we're going to throw in some videos here so you can see a little more about how to calibrate and how to maintain and work your irrigation systems. So the question is, why do we even irrigate plants? Well, plants, as you know, need water. And the irrigation system that we use, whether it be an automatic irrigation system, micro irrigation, watering with the hose, or even watering with a watering can, irrigation should be seen as supplemental to the rainfall. So irrigation is used to sustain our plants when rainfall is not sufficient. So some people see it the other way around, that rainfall is supplemental to our irrigation, but that's really not the case. We typically get a lot of rainfall here in Florida. So on occasion, when we don't have enough rainfall, we need to use our irrigation systems to supplement the rainfall that we're not getting. So we want to water efficiently so we can save water, which in turn will save money. And we really want to reduce our pollution into the waterways here in Southeast Florida. Most of Florida's lawns and landscape plants are irrigated with potable drinking water. So this is a concern. So we're using perfectly good water on our landscapes. So we want to make sure that we save this water because it is a limited resource. We don't want to over irrigate our landscapes with potable water. We also don't want to over irrigate our landscapes with any water, whether it be potable or whether it be reclaimed or recycled water. So some of you might irrigate your landscapes with potable water, but some of you might have reclaimed water as your irrigation or recycled. We call these the purple pipes or the pink pipes. That's the pipes that indicate that there's reclaimed water being used in your area. So if you see new construction, you see this colored pipe, you know that pipe is for the reclaimed water. Just remember though, reclaimed water is still considered a limited resource. It's not, we don't just have plenty reclaimed water. It is actually treated. So it's not just stormwater runoff. It actually goes to the treatment plant. It's just not treated to our drinking water standards. It doesn't go through the complete treatment. It's only approved for use on automatic sprinkler systems. And that's because it is not potable. It's not able to on that standard of being used for drinking water. We don't want to hook it up to a hose and somebody drinks out of the hose and ends up drinking the reclaimed water, or we also don't want to hook it up to any micro irrigation system that somebody could accidentally drink from. It does contain more salt than our potable water, so you do want to test it periodically. Again, it's not treated to the same standards. And it also might also contain some plant nutrients, and that so it can offset some of your fertilizer needs. A lot of times the reclaimed water has a lot of nitrogen in it, and nitrogen is one of the main nutrients for plants. And we'll talk more about nitrogen next week. You want to make sure that you don't use reclaimed water on any edibles. And I say that, I should say, you don't want it to touch any edible fruit. So you're able to use reclaimed water on fruit trees or any plants or shrubs that the water actually isn't touching the fruit that you're going to consume. But you don't want to use it in your small vegetable garden where it might touch the tomatoes or touch the cucumbers, and then you go and consume that fruit. And the water quality does differ between wastewater treatment plants. And it varies from time to time too. So that's why you may want to keep getting it tested for salt content. So going on to water efficiently, remember with the Florida-friendly landscape design that we talked about last week with finding the right plant for the right place, that's the keystone to this program. And if we can group our plants together with the same needs, whether it be sun, shade, and also water requirements, that design and the installation of our landscapes to the right plant, right place will help to minimize our irrigation after the plants are established. And I talk about establishments because that's really important to understand. Establishment of plants is when the roots grow beyond the initial root ball. So you can imagine when you first plant a plant, they have a small root ball. All the roots are contained in that little area. It takes time for those roots to grow beyond that root ball and into the landscape. So when your plants are young and you just plant them, they are going to require more water than they would once they are established because they don't have that large root system yet to reach out to find more water. So when we are planting new plants, we'll talk about that in a second. I'll explain more on how much and how long you have to water new plants. But for efficient irrigation, again, we want to remember that we want to separate our lawn and our landscape plant zones. This is important because established landscape plants don't need as much water as our turf grass. Our turf and our lawn requires more water because it has a smaller root system. It grows very quickly. So it has a higher water need. We also want to make sure that we group plants together with the same similar watering needs. So you want to put your water loving plants in one location and your drought tolerant plants in another location. Make sure that you're always adjusting your sprinklers and try not to water the hard surfaces. I don't know about you, but I always get a little disturbed when I see an irrigation system and the sprinkler is watering the sidewalk or watering the street. And that's just a waste of water. The water is not going where we need it, which is on the plants. Convert any of your landscape beds to low volume irrigation. And we're going to talk about low volume irrigation at the end of this presentation, which is also called micro irrigation. Now, irrigation systems do need to be maintained, and we need to check them for any blockage. Maybe the plants might be blocking the spray of the irrigation. You could have broken irrigation heads. You could have clogs. We have very sandy soils here in Florida, so your irrigation systems can get clogged. So you want to make sure that you definitely test your irrigation system monthly. So let's talk about those new plants that we're planting. Newly installed plants are irrigated to encourage the roots to grow. So we don't want to water them, give them a lot of water only once a week. We want to give them light waterings frequently in order to allow that root ball to grow. Even if these plants are drought tolerant, they still need irrigation when you first plant them until they are established. Now, the establishment period for the shrubs and trees and perennials in your landscape, it varies. Perennials, of course, are going to grow a lot faster than a tree or a shrub, so they're going to be established in the landscape probably within 2 months, where a shrub and a tree could take much longer to become established. Trees can take anywhere to 3 to 4 months. I've seen trees even take up to a year to become established in the landscape, depending on the size of the tree that's planted. Larger plants take longer time to become established than a smaller plant. A smaller plant is growing more vigorously, or a younger plant is growing more vigorously, so it can extend those roots out quicker into the landscape compared to an older plant that's planted. Shrubs can take anywhere from 20 to 28 weeks. So that's approximately 5 to 6 months or 7 months for the shrubs to become established in the landscape. So we want to make sure that we apply 2 to 3 gallons per inch of trunk diameter every other day. So we want to give them a good watering frequently to keep those roots wet and to also encourage them to grow out in the landscape. And then you need to keep an eye on them for at least up to a year after planting. When I see a tree or shrub die within a year of planting, it's typically a water issue, and most likely it's not enough water. So we need to make sure we water those plants to maintain so they can be maintained and healthy and happy. Now, once your plants are established in the landscape and you have the right plant for the right place, the mature established landscapes plants should not need supplemental irrigation except in times of extreme drought. Drought tolerant plants especially can go up to 6 weeks without water, sometimes even longer depending on the time of year and the soils that they are planted in. So we don't need to always be irrigating our plants. We can turn off that irrigation. Now, what about native plants? Native plants have the reputation of being very drought tolerant, but just remember that a lot of native plants are also wetland plants. So the wetland plants obviously aren't very drought tolerant. So they don't necessarily require less water than our non-native, or what we like to call Florida-friendly plants. Also, remember that the soils that are around our homes also aren't necessarily the native soils that were once here. It's a lot of fill that comes in. So the landscape sites have different conditions when it comes to soil and sunlight, et cetera, than the native conditions that these plants have originated from. So treat your native plants just as you would treat your Florida-friendly plants as far as watering them to become established. Because I hear that a lot. Well, it's a drought-tolerant native plant, and I planted it, and it should have survived. Well, once it's established, you have to get those roots growing out into the landscape. Now, turf is a little different beast, I would say, than our landscape plants. Turf relatively has a shallow root system and typically requires irrigation at least once a week, sometimes 2 times a week, depending on the time of year and if we have rainfall, versus our landscape plants. The water needs can increase with increasing temps. So in the summertime, when it gets hotter out, it's going to require more irrigation, but luckily it rains more in the summer. So we might even get a chance to turn off our irrigation system. Remember, our irrigation supplements rainfall. So we can only use it when we really need it. So you see this photo here, and there's some what you would consider dead grass there. Well, that grass really isn't dead, it's just dormant. And this is what happens to our turf grass when it does not get enough water. It goes dormant. So it can actually sustain long periods of time without water. However, that's not the standards that we have. Most homeowners have here in Florida. They want to have green turf. They don't want it to go dormant. That's why they moved down south from up north, because they want to have green grass all the time. So we do need to keep the turf grass irrigated in order to keep it green, even if it you see turf that is considered drought tolerant, it needs water to stay green. So when we don't have enough water on our turf, it will grow more slowly. Again, it will turn brown until it gets more water. But we can train our turf grass to require less water. I know turf grass gets a bad rap for being water hogs, but honestly, it's the user and not the turf that should be blamed. A lot of homeowners will over irrigate their turf grass, where we can actually train our turf grass, even St. Augustine grass, to require less water. So we should only water our lawn as needed. So how do you know when your lawn needs watering? Well, there's a few signs, and one is you see the photo there on the left with those footprints. When the turf grass starts to lose its turgor, where it can't bounce up again from being stepped on, that's a sign that it needs watered. And when you see the leaf blades turn in half, you see them kind of fold in half there on the picture on the right, that's also a sign. That's the sign of wilting for the turf grass, that it needs water. And now also St. Augustine grass will also turn a shade of bluish green when it needs water. So when your lawn shows sign of water stress, you'll see the footprints, you'll see the folding of the leaf blade, and that's a sign of when it's time to water. And the reason why we want to wait to see these signs in order to water our turf grass is we're going to encourage our St. Augustine grass or a zoysia grass or a bahia grass to grow deeper roots. So it's going to grow deeper roots to find that source of water. If we water 3-4 times a week, the roots stay very shallow because they don't need to dig deep, because they have all the water they need at the surface. So they don't have a deep root system, which means it's not a very strong plant. If we do have times of drought, it's going to struggle more than the turf grass that was allowed to wilt a little bit, to dig those roots deeper and to create that stronger root system. So when we do see, when it is time to water our turf grass, we want to apply 1/2 to 3/4 inch per application. And we'll talk about that in a bit on how you figure out how much that is, how long do you run your irrigation. So here's just a diagram here. You can see the picture on the left. There's shallow watering that encourages shallow roots. When we water frequently, makes the turf more susceptible to drought, pests, and also heat stress. Where the photo in the middle, that turf grass was allowed to stress just a little bit. When it stresses a little bit, it digs those roots down deeper and has that deeper root system. It's more tolerant to drought, more tolerant to pests. And then you can see that photo. It's kind of hard to see, but the photo on the right, that's St. Augustine grass that got away from its planting area in a home where it was not irrigated, and look at those roots that it put down. Those roots are about 1 foot deep, and that's great. That's great to see that deeper root for your turf grass. That's going to be a very drought tolerant St. Augustine grass. We also need to talk about good irrigation design or irrigation system design for your turf grass. If you see the photo on the top, I know it's hard to see, but the top sprinklers, that's actually poor design, because you want the water to touch the other spray head. So you want it to overlap completely. The one on the top, they're only overlapping a little bit. So you're not getting as much water in the middle as you do on the ends that are closer to the sprinkler. Where the photo on the bottom there of the sprinklers, you see that you have uniform coverage, you have complete overlap of the sprinkler system. So what's watered at the end of the spray and towards the beginning of the spray, you have that good coverage, so you have uniform irrigation. So you really want to make sure that you have a good design, so you have that uniform irrigation when you are watering your turf grass, so your turf grass is not stressed in certain locations. You also do not want to irrigate those non-target areas, AKA the sidewalk, the driveway, the road, the house. You want to make sure all sprinklers are faced away from the house. And that also helps with termite protection. So we always get this question, how long do I run my sprinkler system? And when somebody asks me that question, I cannot answer them because it really depends. It depends on your pressure, it depends on your system, how much water you're pushing out, it depends on your head, the irrigation heads that you have, if you have sprays or rotaries. It really depends. We want to make sure though, when we do run our sprinkler system, that we're putting out 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches of water per application. So I want to show you a video on how to calibrate your sprinkler system. So this is really important. You probably want to do this at least once a year. You want to go out and run your sprinkler system and see how much water your sprinkler system puts out in 15 minutes or a half hour. And then you can run it to that time, the time that it takes to get that 1/2 to 3/4 inch of water per application. So let me play this video, and if you guys can't hear it, let me know.
Welcome to Your Florida Lawn, the environmentally friendly way to grow and sustain a Florida-friendly landscape. Your host is Dr. Lori Trenholm, residential turfgrass specialist with the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. Join Lori and her special guests as they offer tips and solutions to maintaining a Florida-friendly lawn.
Have you ever wondered how much water you actually put out each time you run your sprinkler system? It's very easy to calibrate your sprinkler system to know exactly how much you're applying. And that's very important for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't want to overuse water or waste water. And number two, if we apply too much water, that can be harmful to your turf. We're here at the University of Florida Plant Science Research and Education Unit today. This is where much of the turfgrass research at the University of Florida is done, and we're going to show you how to calibrate your sprinkler system. Take some flat, straight-sided containers and randomly place them around each irrigation zone. Cat food cans work great. Set out, say, 6 to 10 of those cans, and then turn your sprinklers on for a set length of time. Let's say, in our example, we'll do 15 minutes. At the end of the 15 minutes, turn the irrigation off and then measure how much water you have in each can. You want the amounts to be fairly consistent between each of the cans. If you see that one can has almost no water, well, the others all have more water, then you know that you're not getting uniform coverage and you need to check and see what's causing your system to not be putting water out uniformly. Maybe you ran over a sprinkler head or one got misaligned or something like that. After you've looked for consistency, add up the amounts in each of the individual cans. Divide that by the total number of cans, and that will tell you how much water you've put out for the length of time you've run your system. For example, what we just did was we applied water into 10 cans. We got a total amount from the 10 cans of 2.5 inches of water. That means that in 15 minutes, we applied 1/4 inch in each can. That's how much our irrigation system is putting out in 15 minutes. So how much water should you apply to your lawn each time you irrigate? University of Florida recommendations call for anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of water each time you irrigate for most lawns. So based on our example, you would need to run your irrigation system for 30 to 45 minutes to apply the proper amount of water. One thing that you need to remember, and be careful of this, since water pressure can vary throughout the day, you need to do your calibration at the same time that your irrigation system does come on. Usually this is first thing in the morning. So get up early one of these mornings and go outside and calibrate your sprinkler system. You'll probably have your neighbors wondering what you're doing, so pass this message along to them too. In other sessions, we'll talk about getting up close and personal with your sprinkler system and how to let your lawn tell you when it needs to be watered. From the University of Florida Extension Service and Florida Friendly Landscaping, I'm Dr. Lori Trenholm with your Florida Lawn.
All right. So hopefully you all are encouraged now and go out and calibrate your sprinkler system, because it is important to know exactly how much you're putting out. You want to make sure you apply enough water and not too much water for the health of your turf grass. We also want to irrigate early in the morning. Now, I know with some municipalities and some HOAs, they might tell you when you can or can't water. They have your irrigation on a certain time. But the best time to water is between 4 and 7 o'clock in the morning. And this is because the wind is typically calmer in the morning, so your water is going to go onto the plant and not be blown all over, so you can have uniform coverage. Temperatures are typically cooler in the morning, so you're going to have a less evaporation. And then also, watering in the morning does decrease the disease of your plants. For example, when you water in the morning, the sun does eventually come out and it will dry the leaf blades, which will help prevent disease, because disease loves wet leaves. So if we water in the evening, we don't have that sun out and the leaves of the plant stay wet all night long. And that's a more opportune environment for the disease to come in and take hold and spread in your landscape, whether it be a landscape plant or your turf grass. If we water between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. right in the heat of the day, you're going to lose anywhere from 40 to 60% of your irrigation water to evaporation. So it's really important, if you can water in the morning, that's the preferred time. If you can't water in the morning, then at least water in the evening, but just be aware that that is going to increase your opportunity for disease on your plants. Also, watch the weather. If it has rained, and when I say rain, I mean a significant rainfall, not like the little bit of rain that we might had yesterday here. I know it rained a little bit in the early mornings, but that wasn't a significant rainfall. Significant rainfall is going to be about a ½ inch of rain. So if it has rained in the past 24 hours, don't water the next day. If rain is forecasted in the next 48 hours, you could also skip an irrigation event. Make sure to purchase a rain gauge so you can measure how much rain that you get in your neighborhood on a daily basis. Because even neighbors that are only a ½ mile apart could have different rain events. One could have a lot of rain and the neighbor just down the street could hardly have any. You also want to make sure that your irrigation system, your automatic irrigation system, has a rain shutoff device that is working, I should say. Make sure it's working, that it's actually set up to turn off your irrigation system when we have a significant rain event. So you see the photo there on the right, that is a shutoff device. You see those corks in there. There's a couple of different ways that the shutoff devices work. This one has corks in it, so when it rains, those corks will expand and it shuts off your irrigation, so you aren't watering when you have that rain event the day before. And then once those corks dry out, then it turns your irrigation system back on. This can save a lot of money, and you're not wasting water, and you're also not overwatering your plants. Some of these systems might just have a measuring cup in there that measures how much water that collects during the rain. You can set the rain shutoff device to how much rain you want to collect before it does shut off your irrigation system. So you can set it at ½ inch or 3/4 inch. There's also new technology that's called a soil moisture sensor, which you bury underneath the turf grass in the root zone, and it measures the amount of moisture in the soil itself. And it will shut off the irrigation system when you have significant moisture or rain event in that root zone, and then turn it back on when that soil gets dry. So that's even more efficient than just the rain shutoff device that we have. I should also note that make sure your rain shutoff device isn't covered up by trees, any faucet, or anything else that might keep the rain from collecting in that rain shutoff device. We don't want to get into the state of mind of setting it and forgetting it as far as our irrigation controller goes. So those of you who have a automatic irrigation system, make sure this is an active system where I'm saying, when I say active, I mean that you're actually going out and you're turning it off and turning it on and changing it with the seasons, changing it with the rainfall, and changing it with the needs of your plants. Because your plants might need it more often when they're young, but when they are older, you could probably turn off that irrigation zone and only turn it back on again when we have significant drought. And as a reminder, our turf grass should be on a different zone, watering zone, than our landscape plants. Learn how to operate your automatic irrigation control system. At least learn how to turn it off and turn it back on again. And hopefully when you do the calibration of your irrigation system, that will give you some practice on how to turn it on, turn it off, and set the timer so you know how much water it's putting on out per application. Now we're going to go back to Dr. Trenholm and have her show us how to work our irrigation clock. Hopefully.
Welcome to Your Florida Lawn, the environmentally friendly way to grow and sustain a Florida-friendly landscape. Your host is Dr. Lori Trenholm, residential turf grass specialist with the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. Join Lori and her special guests as they offer tips and solutions to maintaining a Florida-friendly lawn.
Have you ever wondered what an irrigation controller really does? How does it make your irrigation system come on? What are all these buttons and knobs and dials here? And how can you adjust any of these to get the maximum irrigation efficiency for your lawn? Sometimes these contraptions can be pretty confusing. And actually, when homeowners don't understand how to best utilize their irrigation controller, they're not going to get maximum irrigation efficiency. Here to help explain some of what this controller actually does today is Dr. Michael Dukes. Michael is an associate professor in the Agricultural and Biological Engineering Department at the University of Florida, and his specialization is working on these irrigation controllers and research related to them. So Michael, start by showing us, if you would, what is an irrigation zone?
An irrigation zone, also called an irrigation or station on this controller, is essentially a way to break up the irrigation system into pieces that can be watered with the water supply fed to the house. There's not enough water to water the entire lawn all at once. So you have these zones, and the zones are operated by solenoid valves, which are connected to the controller.
Now, how many zones would a lawn like this one have?
This lawn here has 4 zones.
Okay.
Many typical lawns have 4 to 6 zones.
All right, and one zone gets irrigated at a time, correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
One right after the other.
So Michael, how would one change the frequency or the number of days with which they irrigate?
The frequency, you can see this controller here is pointed to off, and it particularly tells you how it's operating because the last number blinks when it's off. When you turn it to an irrigation schedule, the time stays fixed. You can look at this one, and on Monday it says off, so it's not going to run on Monday. On Tuesday it says on, and then on Wednesday off, Thursday off, Friday on. Saturday and Sunday are also off. So this one's set for 2 days a week on a custom schedule.
Now, how would you change this? Say if you wanted to go from 2 days a week to 1 day a week, perhaps during the winter months, how would you turn one of those days off?
On this controller, it's pretty simple. They all vary a little bit, but you can see here it says on and off. So you just hit off, and now Friday's off.
That sounds pretty simple. So folks could very easily adjust the number of irrigations that their lawn is getting throughout the week.
Correct.
Very easily. Now, one final thing that we need to talk about with this is how long should our irrigation system actually run, and how does one adjust that?
That's a good question too. That depends on your particular area. Generally, we recommend 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. Of course, on here, it doesn't say 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch, but you can see this one here is set for 60 minutes. And it depends on the equipment. Rotary sprinklers are typically 45 to 60 minutes per cycle, and that's 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch typically. Spray heads are a little bit less, or sometimes a lot less, depending on how they're spaced. So you can see here, zone 1 is set for 60 minutes run time. Zone 2 is 60 minutes run time, and those are both rotary sprinklers. Zone 3 is 60 minutes, and then zone 4 is 30 minutes, and that's a set of spray heads.
Spray head. So you should know how long it takes you to put out the 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch
That's
of water.
correct.
And we cover that in another video segment called How to Calibrate Your Sprinkler System. But I think, this makes it pretty easy for a homeowner to actually be able to open this up and figure out how to apply the correct amount of water. And of course, some of the other things they want to look for are irrigation efficiency. They should watch their system run periodically, make sure they don't have broken spray heads. What other recommendations would you have?
Well, another thing to program that's very important is the irrigation start time. And you can see this controller has 1, 2, 3 potential start times. And this one is set to start at 6 a.m. So the zone 1 will come on at 6 a.m., run for 60 minutes. Zone 2 will then come on after zone 1, run for 60 minutes, so on and so forth. You could have multiple start times if that were necessary, if there was a runoff issue or a slope. And then, of course, the typical settings for date and time. And that's really about it. There is a percentage adjustment so that if you wanted to adjust percentage, if an area was shady and needed a little bit less water than some of the other areas, you could do that.
That's a great feature because we do need to irrigate those areas less than the ones that are in full sun.
Right.
All right. What other words of advice should we give folks? What about use of a rain shutoff sensor?
That's a good point. By Florida statute, most irrigation systems are required to have a rain shutoff device or a rain sensor. And that's wired into this controller. Different controllers vary slightly, but essentially it deactivates the signal between the controller and the valve when the rain shutoff is wet or after rainfall. And then when it dries out, the controller works on its normal schedule as we saw programmed here. And also homeowners should be mindful of the water restrictions. If it's 2 days a week, 1 day a week, or 3 days a week.
Right, have to follow those regulations.
Right.
And of course, one of the best things that a homeowner can do is look at your lawn. If it's showing signs of wilt, then perhaps you need to adjust your irrigation controller if regulations allow for that. But quite often homeowners overwater or apply irrigation too frequently or for too long a period of time. So keep an eye on your lawn and let it tell you if it's going thirsty or if it's doing real well with the water it's getting.
Good point.
Michael, one last question. What would be an example of when a person would want to turn this controller to off?
A good time to do that would be when it's rainy, for example, maybe in the summer or in the wintertime when the turf is dormant. You would just simply turn it off.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Dukes, thank you so much for sharing your expertise here with us this morning. We really appreciate this, and this is very valuable information. From the University of Florida IFAS Extension Service and Florida Friendly Landscaping, I'm Dr. Lori Trenholm for your Florida Lawn.
Great. Well, I wanted to make sure that you see that you shouldn't be intimidated by your irrigation controller. It's not that difficult to use. You can get out the user manual, which is online if you still don't have that user manual, and you can read about it. But like Dr. Dukes and Dr. Trenholm showed you, it's not very difficult. And that setting to turn it completely off when we're getting all that rain in the summertime is perfectly okay to do. We really don't want to overwater our plants, and we don't want to overwater our turf grass, because overwatering does encourage disease. It encourages weeds. You see that photo there on the top? That is dollarweed. Dollarweed is an aquatic plant. So if you have dollarweed growing in your turf or growing in your landscape beds, that means you have there's too much water in that area, whether it be from irrigation, rainfall, drainage. If you water appropriately and allow that area to dry out, that dollarweed will die on its own because it can't live without too much water. So definitely a sign of overwatering when you see that dollarweed. We also know from the previous slides that overwatering promotes shallow root systems, and we want our plants in our turf grass to have really deep root systems so they can be healthier and be better adaptable to dry conditions. Also, overwatering can reduce oxygen to the roots, so that can cause stress to the plants. It can also cause the roots to rot, and when roots rot, plants die. And most importantly, by the effects of overwatering, you can have nutrient runoff. You see that photo on the bottom, the left side of the soil profile is sandy soils, which we typically have here in Martin County. And then the right side of that photo is clay soils. Clay soils are able to hold nutrients. They're able to hold onto that nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus quite well. But in sandy soils, those nutrients drain very easily. So if we overwater, the water is going to take those nutrients that are in the soils and take it right down into the aquifer. So we want to make sure that we don't overwater so that water doesn't carry away those excess nutrients. And then next week, we're going to talk about how to fertilize appropriately. So that's going to help even more with reducing that nutrient runoff or leaching. And then also the effects of overwatering, just wasted water, wasted money. We don't want to overwater when it's not needed. So I want to talk a little bit about low volume irrigation or micro irrigation. Micro irrigation is, I don't want to say it's a new trend, but there's a lot of homeowners right now that are setting up micro irrigation systems in their homes, in their landscapes, because it's quite simple. You can get a starter kit at the home improvement stores, and they're pretty inexpensive, and you can set up your own system. So there's different types. There's drip tubing, which you see the photo on the left is drip tubing, where it's just basically just a hose with holes in it. And wherever the hole is, the water comes out when it's turned on. There's drip emitters, where you have this spaghetti tubing. I'll show you better pictures in a second. And there's also micro sprinkler systems. And micro irrigation applies water directly where you want it to go, to the roots of the plant. So micro irrigation is not for your lawn. It's not, you can't really use it for your lawn, but you can use it for your landscape beds, for your plants, for your trees and your shrubs and your perennials and your annuals. What are the pros of micro irrigation? Again, it applies water directly to the plant's roots where you want it to go. So you're not watering just soil, you're watering the roots. Micro irrigation is exempt from watering restrictions. So if your local municipality had a water restriction where you could only water once a week or twice a week, these are exempt because they are so efficient. They're exempt from those restrictions. They can be easily attached to a hose or an outdoor faucet. And they can be controlled with a battery operated timer. So you don't have to go out there every day and turn on your irrigation. You can hook up a timer that turns it on automatically for you. So you have a little bit of automation there. And it's useful as temporary irrigation. Remember, our new plants need more irrigation. And then once they're established, they probably don't need any more supplemental irrigation except in times of drought. So you could set it up when you're in your newly planted part of your landscape, let it run for a couple months or as long as it's needed until those plants are established. Then you can pack it up or you can move it to another part of your landscape. Or you can put it out when we do have times of drought. It's very easily installed. It's very easy for homeowners to do, and you can just go to your local home improvement store and get all the parts that you need. But it does have the cons. There are some negative aspects of micro irrigations. You will want to install a filter to keep out the sand. Remember, we have very sandy soils here in Martin County, and they can plug and clog your emitters. So you do want to check on these irrigation systems regularly, just like you would with your automatic irrigation system. You want to go out and routinely do maintenance on it. You might need to unclog a emitter. You might have a leak. You might have a hole, because it can be easy to puncture one of the tubing. So you might have to fix a leak, which again, it's not hard to fix a leak in your micro irrigation system. So this is the drip emitters. The drip emitters consist of a tube, and that tube carries the water. And then wherever you want a emitter to go, you just punch a hole in that tubing. You connect what's called spaghetti tubes, which are the skinnier tubes. At the end of that spaghetti tube is a little drip emitter that drips the water directly to the roots of the plant. So you can see it going here. You can even cover this with mulch if you don't like the look of the tubing. I wouldn't put it too deep under the mulch because you might need to dig it out, but you can cover it up so you don't have that look there. But you can see that the emitters are directing the water right to the roots of the plant so you don't have any wasted water. And then there's also the micro sprayers. So the micro sprayers spray a little more water a larger surface area. So if you have a large planting or a lot of trees and shrubs in an area that you're planted, you may want to go for the micro sprayers versus the emitters, because they do apply water at a higher volume with the sprays. But it's still considered micro irrigation and still considered low volume irrigation and saves water. So in review of irrigating efficiently, just remember that irrigation is supplemental to rainfall. You know, we rely on Mother Nature to water your plants as much as she will water your plants for you, because that's free rainfall. And then use your irrigation system and your micro irrigation and your hose and your watering cans as supplemental irrigation as needed. Make sure that your plants, as far as your trees and shrubs and perennials and annuals, are in separate zones from your turf grass, and group plants with the same water needs together. As a reminder, your established and your mature trees and shrubs need little to no supplemental irrigation except in times of extreme drought. Make sure you have a well-designed irrigation system, and make sure that your rain sensor is connected and working. They do wear out after a few years. So if your rain sensor has been installed on your irrigation system for a number of years, you might want to test it out. And I forgot to mention, how do you test out your rain sensor? Well, turn on your irrigation system and take a hose and make it rain on your shutoff device of your rain sensor. And if it shuts off your irrigation system, then you know it works. But if it doesn't, then it probably needs replaced. Maintain and calibrate your irrigation system, whether it be a micro irrigation system or underground automatic irrigation system, on a regular basis, because spray heads do get broken. There are leaks, things can get clogged. And make sure that you use micro irrigation in your plant beds. It's a more efficient way to water your plants in those areas. With that, I'll take any questions that you might have. You can write them in the chat box. I will be sending out a list of references. This is going to be mailed to you on Water Efficiently. For those of you who attended last week, hopefully you got the Right Plant, Right Place reference list. This is a list of references that was put together by one of our master gardeners, Susan. So thank you, Susan, for putting together the list of references. As always, the Martin County Master Gardeners are available to take any questions, plant questions, insect questions, any questions that you have with the lawn or landscape. You can email them or you can give them a call. If you're not from Martin County, you can contact your local Master Gardeners. Our EDIS, electronic database information source, is a great resource for a lot of information on irrigation. So if you want even more information, you can go on there and search some different topics, as well as fact sheets on plants. Next week, we are going to talk about fertilizing appropriately. And yes, I did record this session. So if anybody wants a copy to watch this again, just send me an email and I'll send you out the link so you can watch this presentation again. With that, if there's no more questions, I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I hope you can attend next week, as we dive into how to fertilize your lawn and your landscape. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.